Good evening. We will call the Planning Commission meeting to order. If we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. If we could have the roll call, please.
So Chair Monique, Commissioner Guerrero,
Yes, here.
Vice Chair Commissioner Armstead. Here. Commissioner Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Quill. Thank you. Commissioner Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Present.
And Commissioner Sherrick.
Present.
And Commissioner Garcia.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we can go ahead and have the administration of oath, please.
Anybody who wants to speak, please stand and raise your right hand. Just in general, yeah. Can you stand, sir? Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do. You may be seated.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda? Oh,
There
Jessica,
is-
we have a gentleman.
Yeah, I have two.
Two. Yes, we have Al Palazzo and Treasurer Ortiz.
Okay.
Good evening, Commission. I wanted to come tonight because on our last council agenda, an item was brought forward for a public hearing that was pulled. And it was the storage unit center on Highland in the 6th Ward that you all voted not to approve. That same item was then rushed back to you as a special meeting so that you could reassess the land and put it together as one parcel. And you were told that that the owner wanted it that way so they could look at other possibilities for development. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was that they were going to appeal your decision to the city council and create loopholes to override your decision. Orchestrated by Nathan and David Murray, who have since resigned from our city. I came here tonight because the lack of transparency, the undercutting, the backdoor deals have to be exposed. And I want you to know that you have not just my support, but the community support for what you're doing. Because in the same instance that they were trying to undercut you for this storage unit is the same thing they're trying to do with the grinding and crushing at the Oxbow. As if your voices don't matter. Now, when you can't take the heat, you get out of the kitchen. That's why those two aren't here anymore. But that doesn't mean that we're going to pull back, that we've resolved any issues. This just means that I ask you as a body to be more vigilant, to be more aware that when you're being shoved into a special meeting, when things are just being pushed across the agenda, it is because 9 out of 10 times the city has proven they are not about the right thing. And that is the most sad conclusion to draw for anybody that's living in a city. And so I want to thank you guys for your due diligence, but I want you to be aware, if you weren't watching the council meeting, that's what came. It was pulled. Nobody told us why it was pulled, but in the backup material, it was completely aware that because you had made the decision to consolidate the parcels, there was no reason for that project not to move through. So please understand, ask a million questions. You never have to rush to a decision. I don't care what a city attorney tells you. I don't care what a director tells you. If your gut feeling says this moment doesn't seem ethical, moral, or even logical, that we are being pushed to make these decisions, you're calling us into private meetings, you're doing everything that seems the opposite of what the community would benefit from, stop. Remember, you guys can talk 2 or 3 of you before you ever break the Brown Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Alfred Palazzo. I have recently moved back to San Bernardino. I grew up in San Bernardino. I have a vision for rebuilding this city. I'm going to try to make your meetings, and I'm not going to respond to any particular item on an agenda. I'm just going to give you the benefit of my expertise. I was the deputy assessor for 35 years and assigned to the western portion of the county. I've been retired 15 years. Most of that development that you see from Fontana West to the county line, including Rancho, Upland, Montclair, Ontario, Chino, it was my responsibility to evaluate that development, to determine the value for those cities and the county and the state of California as an employee of the assessor's office. I want to bring that expertise back to San Bernardino. That's why I have moved back. And little by little, I will be sharing ideas that I hope give you some insight as to how other cities have been doing things for decades and how we can improve our city. One area that's important to me is architecture. It's in any and every kind of development, not just commercial properties. It can be in residential, it can be in light industrial, it could be in private office buildings. We have 6 main commercial streets in our city. My experience and expertise tells me we can develop all of them in a different way because of the different type of commercial buildings that I will explain in future meetings when I focus on a particular street. And right now I'm focused on the downtown because of our concern with the Carousel Mall, and we want affordable housing. I know my time is almost up, but I will be addressing all those issues. I say that I have solutions. I just don't want to point out what we're missing in San Bernardino. I take people on a vision tour, and I, in past decades, took 75 citizens in San Bernardino, prominent citizens. Unfortunately, some of those people have passed away. I'm looking at that board, and I would love to take all of you on my vision tour. I can cut it down to 2 hours and give you the basic concepts of how we should be rebuilding this city. But I don't think all of you would fit in my car. But I have a lot to say based on my professional background growing up in San Bernardino, my knowledge of how other cities in California have evolved, and the traveling that I've done abroad. So this is my first time here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Consent items are considered routine in nature and may be enacted in one motion. All public and non-public hearings will be open at one time. Any item may be discussed separately upon request of a member of the Planning Commission or member of the public. Does staff have any updates to the consent calendar?
The only item we have for the consent agenda this evening is the minutes of last month's meeting, April 11th.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the consent calendar items? If not, may I entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, call for the vote.
Commissioner Guerrero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Armstead? Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia? Yes. Commissioner Kuhl?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing items. The Planning Commission will first hear a report from staff, and then the public hearing will be open. The applicant will have an opportunity to speak. Next, members of the public will be allowed to speak. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak must be sworn in and also fill out a request to speak form. The forms are located on the table near the door. When your name is called, come forward and speak into the microphone. Say and spell your name and give your address for the taped record. After all have spoken, the applicant will be allowed to respond. The public hearing will then be closed and the Planning Commission will begin deliberations and make a decision. All actions except general plan amendments and amendments to the Municipal Development Code are final action unless an appeal is filed and fee paid within 15 days to the Community Development Department. If you challenge a resultant action of the Planning Commission in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this agenda, or in written correspondence delivered to the Community Development Department at or prior to the public hearing. Item number 2, please.
Good evening. Item number 2, this is item that was continued from the previous Planning Commission meeting of April 11th. So it is Development Permit Type P 22-6, which is just for the design and the development and construction of 20 single-family residential homes that are going to be approximately 3,219 square feet with attached 3-car garage that are composed of 675 square feet. As previously mentioned, it is part of a previously approved tentative tract map 17329 that is located on the northwest corner of West Ohio Avenue and North Little League Drive within the residential estate zone, and it's comprised of 24.6 acres. As you can see, this is the existing project site for the property. Here we have a location map in terms of it is located within the residential estate and is surrounded by existing residential low development. Here we have the sky view of the project site area in terms of the development and where it's going to be located. As mentioned, the project design and floor plan for the homes, it's for single-story residences comprised of 3,219 square feet. It's going to have, a master bedroom, 2 standard bedrooms, and then optional rooms, as well as additional amenities if chosen by whoever decides to purchase the homes there at the location. The architecture of the properties is contemporary farmhouse and mountain design, and each of them are going to have very distinctive tone colors and material schemes. Access through the site is going to be through an extension of North Little League Drive. A lot of it has is in process of being constructed or already constructed as part of the previously approved tentative tract map. And also through Verdemont Drive with some internal roads. The landscaping of the site is going to have drought-tolerant, non-invasive plants that are going to be consisting of evergreen trees, perennials, succulents, and other types of inorganic ground cover as well. Here's the existing site and the proposal for the layout for the homes. And as I mentioned, this project will also have accessory dwelling units, but per state regulation, we are not able to provide any kind of discretionary review. It has to be done at staff level administratively. Here we have the contemporary farmhouse design for the proposed single-story homes. And here we have the existing mountain design for the proposed homes. Here's an example of a proposed floor layout for the plan and the front yard landscaping. And with that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2023-02, directing the Planning Commission Secretary to prepare and file the Clerk of the Board Notice of Determination and approve Development Permit Type P 22-06. In the previous meeting, I know there was a lot of concerns regarding some of the issues because of the rains and the flooding and within that area. Although that was not in association with the design of the homes, and it's not part of this project, we do have a Public Works representative who will be able to address those concerns and how currently right now they're working with the developer to make sure that once construction of the homes commences, everything will be addressed through a grading plan.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Pan. I'm the acting city engineer for the Public Works Department. So we are responsible for processing the grading permits for these projects, as well as the other associated permits like off-site improvements, parcel maps, track maps. So in particular, for this project, the concerns with the on-site runoff of, from rain events. So those we are processing. We have two permits that are under review right now. One is for their Borrow Basin, which is a temporary facility. And so we're reviewing the grading for that and you kind of, the storm drain, drainage issues associated with that. But keep in mind that is a temporary facility. And with the permanent phase 4 grading improvement, they are going to backfill, that area entirely. So the permanent grading permit, that's also being reviewed right now. And we're, thoroughly reviewing the drainage condition and also, the storm drain system, part of that permanent phase 4 development. So with that statement, I'd like to answer any questions that you have, see if I can help answer that. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. This project was originally approved, I think it was about 8 years ago.
Correct, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Or even longer.
Okay, even longer.
Yeah.
Have there been a considerable amount of changes to the required state engineering for this type of development or grading? I know in other industries, specifications change all the time. And what brought this about, one of the reasons we asked this to be extended to this meeting
Yes.
is to review and see if there's been any changes in the grading requirements over that period of time. Is that a case? And should we be looking at that when some of these projects have been postponed for so long?
Well, the industry standard, certainly for the, there's regulations changes pertaining to like the MPDS requirement, and which we, or any of the engineering requirement, we have incorporated all those in the current review. So, because the design is all new, it wasn't like a old design plan from 10 years ago that we are reviewing and approving. So the design is really all current, and we are reviewing it per the current, all the rules and regulations and design standards.
If I may add to Commissioner Quayle, we do have the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and in that program, it stipulates that if there are any grading NPDES or additional requirements, that is something that can be reviewed and it's imposed as a mitigation. But as Susan mentioned, obviously there's new rules and regulations that change with time, but that is only for, that allows them to be able to continue the review on grading plans as new rules come in through the grading plan review, through any of that type of review. So there is the mitigation measures imposed on the project allow her to be able to make sure that they are following current rules and regulations.
Good afternoon, Susan, thank you for coming out. We definitely had some concerns, and we know that we've had a unusual amount of precipitation this year coming from somewhere. So I mean that's aggravating the situation a little bit too. But
Right.
my concern is that. Yeah, about 8 years ago, they designed this. I've been up in the area, and I've looked around at this site as well as, I think it was probably another phase of this same project. But, the storm basin or the water basin, catch basin, whatever you want to call it, it's being, for the lack of a better word, it's kind of being consumed by the project. So how is this drainage? We're right at the base of the mountain there. So how are we going to safely drain this water into whatever, directed to another basin somewhere? Are we going to go into the water, wastewater? I mean, where is all this water going to go when we, and it's quite possible we could see, record rain for another year or two or something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
How do we control that? Really control it to where we're not, flooding out people's homes and causing the streets to, how do we do that?
Right, yeah, very good question. And so for this project, we are actually addressing it in 3 different areas. One is that all their homes, right? So these homes that have turned in from, undeveloped land to developed housing. So we actually, they worked with us that, to have a on-site individual home, because they are 1 acre lot size homes. So they have an on-site, their own detention system that's like a wet well, that's going to, like all these additional runoff created from the home development, that's going to be put into, this wet well that will be infiltrated into the ground. So that's one feature. The other is that, the runoff from the streets, then those will be collected by the storm drain systems in the street, and that will be connected to the city's public storm drain system, okay? And then the third area is that being in the hillside community, so they have all the watershed from the mountains above them, that water is coming down too. So, even without this development, you still have, all this, rainfall and that drains down, over land. But in this case, we did ask them that they are, part of their design is to have these debris detention basin. So that's what we are reviewing right now, to make sure that these debris detention basins are supposed to intercept any of the, like, the debris flows or water runoff from the mountain areas above them, be able to kind of to hold them over the peak period, and then be able to drain into, it's also connected to a storm drain system that's drained into the public storm drain system. So it's these, combination of all 3 areas that we're, looking into and making sure that they're all soundly designed to make sure that it will kind of not impact any of the existing community that's, below them. Yeah.
So, 3 very good ideas, I think, but when did you implement this at the onset of the development, or is this something, because it doesn't sound like, or I may be wrong, but it doesn't sound like that these, what did you call that, a wet well?
Yeah.
Yeah, are
Yeah.
they actually being installed there now?
Oh, it will, well, their development have not been, the grading plan has not been approved yet. But when it's approved, when they start the construction, they will be, constructing, these wet wells as part of their whole, site development.
And that's for each single-family dwelling, or is it?
Yeah, each lot will have their own, on-site well. They have to construct and maintain, and they will have a maintenance agreement with the city, to maintain these facilities. This is what we consider a water, WQMP, Water Quality Management Plan facility.
So it will be the city maintaining these wet wells,
No,
on a,
excuse me, so it will be actually individual homeowners are responsible for maintaining, because the facility, this wet well is actually on the private property. So they are responsible for maintaining it, but they are under agreement with the city that they have to, maintain it. It's recorded, so it will be on their property deed. So this is kind of, for all the, a lot of the commercial industrial facilities, when they turn like a piece of raw land into a paved, with building structures over it, and oftentimes they will be required to construct a much larger, underground, like a water detention and infiltration system. And the private commercial or industrial owners will have to, be responsible for maintaining them. And they will sign what's called a maintenance agreement with the city, that we will do periodic inspection, to make sure that they are maintaining those facilities.
may I ask, I mean, just curious, just what all is part of that maintenance? Okay,
Yeah. So
what do they do?
a lot of this is to kind of keep it clean, right, not plugged up. Kind of, if you can think about, like, it's like a storm drain inlet system, because a well is basically kind of allowing water, so they basically collect all the drainage, flow to this particular location, and then allow water to infiltrate into the ground. So you sort of have to maintain that area to be clean, to be, well, kind of ventilated, so to speak, right? So water can continue to infiltrate into the ground. Just kind of like a storm drain inlet, you wanted to kind of make sure it's not completely plugged up, with debris and rocks, trash.
Yeah, I can understand them keeping it clear and debris-free so that the water can get into the wet well.
Right.
But what, is that it? I mean, they just, because what I'm thinking is, this thing fills up at a certain rate. I don't know what size or capacity that you're speaking of.
Yeah. So it's designed, it's designed to be at a like certain size and certain depth. So they almost kind of like to have to construct it, it's like a well, right? So it's backfilled with kind of gravels or some of these materials that will allow water to penetrate down. So those are engineered design, based on a certain, design criteria, and the size of the lot and the amount of, flow that could be runoff, that rainfall precipitation that could be collected on the site and be drained into this well.
So it doesn't have to be pumped out or anything like that periodically?
Yeah, it's good for the environment because, all the rainfall will be penetrated into the ground to recharge our groundwater basin. In this area that our water supply is completely from pumping from the groundwater basin. We don't get imported water for the city of San Bernardino. So this is actually a very good thing, for our city.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have a comment and a question. I'd like to say for the record, after the last Planning Commission meeting, I was contacted by the developer or a developer representative to express their concerns about why we continued this item. And so in the interest of transparency, I want to make that known. I made no decisions or no promises to anyone. One of the reasons that I particularly wanted this item continued was because we had concerns from the residents. And at that commission meeting, I did ask the attorney who was filling in, is this in our purview to ask these questions? Well, I am thrilled with the answers, and I do want to know the answers. I want to also know, is this in our purview?
So Ms. Pan is here for information purposes only. The questions about the conditions relate to conditions that were attached to the tract map, the subdivision entitlement. And if there are issues about whether the mitigations are being complied with, that's a code enforcement issue. But all the information that you're hearing tonight, that is not relevant to the development permit before you tonight. That is strictly the design of the homes. Do you like the design? Do you not like the design? But the conditions that you're discussing about the grading and runoff issues, that's related to another entitlement, and that is not before you for consideration.
So if the residents have concerns that perhaps conditions aren't being met, what steps do the residents take? They call code enforcement, or do they call NPDS and ask for an NPDS inspector to go out? What is their remedy?
I think the first step would be to reach out to code enforcement, and then they would probably coordinate with planning and engineering to determine, first of all, are there conditions that they have to do something? And then second, are they complying with them? I think that'll be the first step.
And for our purposes of, I guess, curiosity or information, were there violations issued against this development during the last rainstorm?
Not the most recent rainstorm.
Okay.
Yeah.
No violations were issued? Or there were violations? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, not like the most recent rainstorms.
The ones that the residents were concerned about, though, I think that took place prior to like last week's rain. I think it was the large rainstorm that occurred.
Yeah, there were no. I mean, the violation would be the mud flow, that gets runoff into the street and down to, the existing neighborhood, right? Down in Little League Drive, around the school, all those homes around there. So that has not, that hasn't happened. I mean, earlier in the year that it did happen, but then we talked, work with the developer, and then they improved their on-site, the best management practices, and to prevent that from happening.
So their violation was cleared up?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think in the last meeting, with the residents concerning voicing their concerns, I live in the neighborhood, so I'm not far. I'm walking distance from the project. I said it last time, I'm a big fan of the project. I think it's great development. I think the biggest thing that we wanted the information, and with you coming, we really appreciate you coming out. So I'm familiar with the project. The water and I got impacted big time. No damage, but just, I seen the mud, so I think the last meeting somebody said, there was a little water, a little bit of mud. No, it wasn't a little bit of water, it was a lot.
Yes.
I think we're just here for information. So it sounds like it's more like a catch basin, but like a leach line where it leaches into the ground. So you're kind of educating us on some of that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the project might even be over excavated by now, or I think the grading plan ain't but there's dirt has been moved on this project, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There has been soil moved on this project?
Well, their grading permit has not been issued, so they're not doing any grading for the permanent Phase 4 development. So that hasn't.
So the grading permit hasn't been approved, but there has been grading done. I'm probably not fine grading, but soil's been moved on the project.
For the temporary borrow basin, but that was done, last year, so it was previously, but.
Okay, and I would hope we're doing, and we're talking about code enforcement. I know there's no secret, there's a lack of any type of enforcement in the city. I mean, we're working on getting it, so to actually have inspectors go inspect these basins and actually have code enforcement, you know, let's be realistic. If a resident like myself or somebody voices their concern, what's the likelihood of actually some action being taken? I mean, we know they know what they're doing, but also we just have the concerns of and included in design, right? Design includes, how beautiful the structures are going to be, but also in the land design and the flood control and whatnot. So I think that's a lot of, I know that's my personal concern, but again, I'm a fan of the project. I want to see it. We just kind of want to see it done right. I'm going to have to live by it. I live by it, so I'm going to be seeing it a lot.
I mean, we take all the concerns and any complaints very seriously. Any, like if any reporting that come to us, we take it very seriously, and, we act on it right away. And that is why we actually are pretty, I would say tough on for this project in plan checking. And I think it's good that, the GFR, the development, really worked with us, because it has been taking longer, to review this particular track development, just because it is in the hillside. There are, environmentally sensitive issues, so we did kind of have say, want them to address like these 3 areas that I mentioned. So, and making sure that they are all, adequately addressed, all designed properly.
Okay, I think that's all I got. And lastly, this is the last phase of this particular track, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Monica. Just to clarify, because you have such a low voice, I didn't hear everything that you said. And maybe because you didn't speak as directly into the mic.
Okay.
But I understand that there are 3 options for the flow of the water. One being the personal, individualized thing for the houses, and the other 2, the storm drain and so forth. The individualized of the houses have to be maintained by the homeowner. And the storm drains, where does that water lead to?
They would eventually drains into the public storm drain system. So the city will maintain the public storm drain system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who maintains the storm system, the storm drain and the others? Is it the city's
Right.
responsibility?
Yeah.
And do they maintain it? Because about 8 years ago, I had seen a storm drain that was filled with debris and was not maintained.
Right, okay. Definitely, Public Works, we have the Operations and Maintenance Division. So they are responsible for maintaining, not just the storm drain system, but also the streets, and along with, many other things. Definitely, they do have a maintenance program. And then if there's like any reporting of things that are not being maintained, that you can always report to the city, that we have a CRM system that you can put in, a request that there's some problem somewhere, which we do get that, that some storm drain is not maintained, or street have pothole problems. So if you see anything like that, you can report it, and then that way can be directed to the attention of our operations and maintenance staff.
And then Albert Maldonado says that the first line of defense for the residents is calling code enforcement. But I don't think code enforcement has expertise in flooding and so forth. So I wonder, is that just going to be a referral made back to you?
It pretty much kind of comes back to our department, and oftentimes come to me. And I will work with our staff to address the issues and, any of the problems reported. Yeah.
And meanwhile, the resident has the flooding. Thank you.
Real quick, the wet well, and you said it's on the site, it's on the individual sites, it's supposed to be maintained. How is the maintenance being enforced? And please don't say code enforcement? Because we already know what that's about.
Right, yeah.
How is it being maintained?
So it actually will be our department, Public Works. We have a MPDS program we have staff inspectors that will go to these facilities to inspect on a regular basis. So for that type of facility is probably once every 3 years. So there's a, we have a maintenance agreement with the property owner. And so they are responsible for maintaining it. And then we have inspectors that will go out to the site to do the inspection, on a regular time period. So that's, and then if there's any problem that we see, then we will let them know. And they are responsible for taking care of it, maintaining it. Otherwise, it will be similarly, we can go to a code enforcement action to make sure that they do it.
So the follow-up is, say they don't maintain it, what happens? Does it back up? I mean, what happens if this is not maintained? Does it back up and then flood their property, flood the neighborhood? What happens?
Right, so so it'll be a code, essentially for us, it's also a code enforcement action that our inspector goes out there and check to verify that, they are not maintaining their facility. We'll probably issue them notice of correction. That's the first step. Then and follow through with them. And if they still don't correct it and maintain their facility, we'll issue them notice of violation, and there's, penalty fees involved. And then eventually, if they still don't maintain it, we ended up hiring contractors, for example, to do it for them. Then we can, essentially, this will be like a tax lien, right? We can put it on their property, because this maintenance agreement is recorded, is already linked to their property, their title, so to speak. So there's, there's a legal way to enforce what we have to do and what they have to do as well. Yeah.
I just have a comment.
Yes.
Listening to these conversations, there are numerous storm drains throughout our community. I mean, a lot of them coming off the hillsides. And I think that's what prompts our concern about this development along the hillsides. I've been here forever, or at least my life, and I have seen many floods, many streets flooded. I've seen Harrison Canyon flood, take out many homes because of the lack of keeping the storm drains cleaned out. So I would think that code enforcement or some department would have a schedule to check these and to verify that they are cleaned out frequently. We all know code enforcement, if it even exists in our city, has their hands full with whatever they're doing, but I think this should be a priority. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that our operations maintenance staff, they are, very diligent about, patrolling our city and, inspecting the facilities and making sure things are on a regular maintenance schedule. And then certainly if they notice any problems or they got reported, any problems, they go out and take care of these things.
Or I would add to the code enforcement thing that Public Works Police itself, that you guys go out and inspect it every now and then. You don't have to wait for a code enforcement officer to do the inspection.
Yeah, absolutely.
These detention basins, is that something that's going to be permanently there, or is that just temporary?
Right. Detention basins usually are intended to be a permanent facility, but my understanding with the developer is that they still have some, development plan for areas that's above or north of, the current development. So it may be when that development happens, then they will be kind of filling these detention basin, but building another, real permanent detention basin further up. So anyway, I can't speak for them. Maybe they can comment on it, but to answer your question, that typically, these detention basins are intended to be a permanent structure to, manage any kind of, debris flows or storm drainage runoff flows that coming from the hillside. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Did you have something? Oh, okay. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And do we have any public comments, anything from the applicant?
We have some public comments from John Samuelson from GFR Homes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, since the gentleman is from GFR, they shouldn't get the 3-minute time limit like a member of the public would.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time this evening. My name is Jonathan Simpson. I work with GFR Homes and wanted to just elaborate a little bit on some of the questions posed by the commission, as well as information, very valuable. I hope it was very helpful from Susan Pan. We work directly with Public Works, Building and Safety, NPDS on nearly a day-to-day basis during this development process. There's a couple of things that I wanted to share. The concern in regards to last meeting and the commission's questions in regards to the entitlement of this property was a little bit disconcerting at the moment, just because we were in the intention of moving forward this project for the architecture, which is before you this evening for your vote, aye or nay. We certainly do understand it's important to take on public comment for anything that comes up in front of the commission or the city council, and we respect that. But the entitlement for this project was many, many years ago. The original entitlement was finalized per city municipal code back in February 22nd, 2006. And where we are today is finally at a point where we can get the economics and lending loans from banks to get this thing built. This is the last phase 4 of a 3-phase project. Phases 1, 2, and 3 have already been developed. Buildings are up. The entire land development has been completed. The houses are up, homes are sold, and we're working through that process now. The entitlement of this was extended by many different opportunities through the state. As you remember, the 2008 home crash led to a complete stoppage in any new homes being developed at that time. And so the state did a few Senate bills and Assembly bills to help make those extensions, to help developers continue on with the entitlements that had been approved by their local jurisdictions, as well as the state, including the California Environmental Quality Act. All of those items were reviewed by the city staff, by Planning Commission, and by City Council at that original approval. Senate Bill 1185, Assembly Bill 333, Assembly Bill 116, Assembly Bill 1303, Assembly Bill 1561, all were enacted by the governor or by the state in order to help developers continue with this development during the hard economic times that they went through. And then COVID hit, which also hurt a lot of the economy during that time. So the governor enacted another extension. These extensions added up to about 9.5 years of time to help developers and business people and engineers, civil engineers, architects, the cities continue on with these development plans. When a tentative map gets approved, there's a number of steps that have to go through by the developer and by different consultants to make an analysis on whether the tentative track map is worthy of being entitled or not. One of those items, which I think is a very important part of concern for most of you this evening, is the hydrology. And the hydrology is when water comes down off from the rain, especially in high impact areas like local mountains, where it all collects into creek sides and, focuses this runoff into a high velocity, lots of water coming in at the same time. During a tentative map process, one of the important items that has to be generated by civil engineers is a preliminary water quality management plan. And that's just an analysis of how is the rain going to be dealt with in this project. And of course, when you develop the project, you've got non-permeable surfaces that you're now building. So back before it's in raw dirt, it just gets collected into the ground. A lot of it gets absorbed into the ground. But when you develop a property, obviously you're putting non-permeable surface. You have tile roofs, you have concrete driveways, you have streets, sidewalks. So how do you deal with that water now that it's not being, falling on raw ground and permeating into the soil? So that hydrology study is really important for the analysis early on in the tentative map before it's approved, in order for civil engineer, public works, engineering to analyze whether or not the appropriate measures are being made to address those new non-permeable surfaces. We, as a part of our development of the project, which is kind of our phase 2, like our phase 1 is get the lots entitled, right? Make them a tentative map that goes through all of the required studies the city sets up for traffic, noise, air quality, cultural resources, water quality. Those are evaluated. We work together with the city to ensure that all of those concerns are met. It goes to public comment, for planning commission, public gets a chance to speak. We address those concerns in many cases where if there's additional concerns that come up, planning commission takes them at the role at that moment before the entitlement is approved, to make sure the developers are addressing those concerns. Once it gets past the planning commission and they recommend approval, it goes to the city council, and there's a second public hearing comment for anyone that has any opposition or support for the project to be approved. At that point, once it's approved by city council, a mitigated neg deck declaration is filed with the state of California, which sets the conditions that the tentative map is approved for in stone. That is the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, approval. At that point, the approval of the tentative map is final. From there, the developer works with the engineering, architecture, many different consultants to work through the design phase. It's where the details come into play, right? Here's the city standard for streets. Here's the city standards for hydrology. Here's the city standards for streetlights. All of those items come together with our improvement plans. And we're working very closely with Public Works right now to get this portion of Dash 4 approved with the details. So when we submit those plans and they get approved, we're not basing the design, the final design for those details on 2006. We're basing those final details on current city standards in 2023. So if it helps to alleviate any concerns, we're not building this project based on what was the design standards for 2006. We're designing these to get this Susan Pan, hopefully sooner rather than later, signing on these in a 2023 current city standards. So I hope that helps. I just want to also add a little bit on the hydrology portion. So as a part of each individual project now, the State Water Board has put in a lot of important measures to ensure that our water quality is safe and better than it has been in the past. And we want to continue to develop those standards to make sure that that happens. The hydrology on this project is going to be dealt with in 3 phases, and Susan touched on all 3 of these. One is the rain coming from the mountain gets caught into a storm drain system that GFR is constructing. to ensure that that rain flow gets caught before it gets down into the downstream properties. Any water that falls in the street is then put into a catch basin system and falls into a storm drain system that we're constructing on site for our project underneath the ground. Both of those two systems eventually get into either detention basin, so on the north side where we're picking up the rainfall from the north, it gets into a storm drain system, then gets put into an interim detention basin to ensure that that water is held, perks down into the ground, and any water that gets into the storm drain system, the silt has had time to collect to the bottom of the ground. And then the water that runs into the storm drain system is clean. I mean, it still looks, it's not perfectly clean that I drink it, but it's certainly dissolved much of the silt falling down to the bottom. Water quality, like I said, plays an important part, and that's the reason why these go into these storm drain systems. The on-site stuff, I think Susan did a really great job in kind of working through your ideas, how that concept works. That system is the third part of this, which is exclusive for the rain that falls on each individual lot. And not only is there a maintenance agreement recorded against the property, but because of that, and because of, you know, the book of disclosures that are presented to our buyers to read, review, sign off on, understand that they're responsible for this maintenance for their home. And of course, if they don't, then there's remedies that the city can take to ensure that that is done. One last one on hydrology. On the final WQMP, which gets approved with the part of our storm drain plans before a grading permit is issued, improvement plan permit is issued, the design for that evolves with the final design of the tract itself. So the tract improvements guide that final water quality management plan. So the preliminary WQMP, which is assigned and approved at the tentative stage, evolves and grows to make sure that it matches and deals with the final design impacts that come up before we get the permit that the city reviews and issues. That WQMP, we're working with Bondeman and Company. They've been a civil engineer in San Bernardino for probably 50 years. In fact, Bondeman's, who's their son now, who runs the company, his father was the designer of the software system that not only Bondeman uses, but many cities use throughout Southern California to ensure that, you know, they're looking at this the correct way. So maybe it's a brag for Bondeman, but we certainly have confidence, and the city has confidence that that WQMP and the hydrology studies that are being done address the right approach to deal with this water. What that does is it sizes the storm drain for us. It's a 48-inch pipe, 24-inch pipe, catch basin locations, the number of catch basins, all of that gets built into the design of the final improvement plans, which are issued a permit once the city is okay with that. Going back real quick, we do know that homeowners some just don't want any development, and that's okay. We deal with that. That's part of our job to deal with. We have many homeowner forums with people when we go through our tentative map process. We've met with both people that were here last. I don't want to say their name on public record, but like, just to protect their privacy, but we work directly with them. We were just at the Verdemont homeowners meeting last week with them. We want to be a part of a solution for the neighborhood. Water quality is a big deal up there. Before we did any development up there, there was an 81-inch storm drain pipe at the corner of Little League and Myers, which was just left open because it was partially improved to go into Cable Creek and eventually down into treatment facility or other, downstream water creek areas. And eventually it all goes out to the ocean. But, I can speak for the owner. We have a very important role in Verdemont to ensure that the growth happens there in a very prudent, logical, way. We want to be good neighbors with the homeowners up there. We had some, initial not problems, but issues with them that were brought up. We wish they would have come to us first, but we're glad to be a part of the conversation. And we've met with them multiple times now. So we're not leaving Vermont area and just kind of ignoring that. We want to make sure that that's addressed, dealt with the homeowners up there, help them with solutions for concerns that they might have. How do we deal with what we talked about last week was how do we deal with, what do we do with the fire? How do we gather? Do we gather at Little League? Can we get horses through there? Like, there's lots of different things of concerns that we want to listen to, because not only are we developing up there, but we've got clients up there and people that we know by there. So we want to be good neighbors, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Code enforcement is not the only people that can address this. We have on our site a land development inspector that's there every day. We have a public works inspector that's there. We have a building and safety inspector that's there. We have a planning review that's up there. We have a fire inspector that's up there. And we have an NPDES inspector that's been on our site many times. We know all of these people on names. We have them on our direct contact list. They know us, we know them. It's not just code enforcement that we're working with on these projects. So I want to ensure the commission that if something does happen, and I know there's addressed in regard to long range, what happens when the developer's gone? How do we enforce these homeowners to make sure they maintain their on-site drainage facilities? But I just wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding that if there's a problem in the neighborhood, it's not just code enforcement that's going to hear about it. There's 5 other city department officials that are there with us nearly on a day-to-day basis up there to ensure that we're building the project in the way that it was approved for. So I hope that helps a little bit. I'm here to help answer any additional questions you might have. I just want to go back to the point that what's before you this evening, and remember, to remind you that it's important that we do address public concern, and we're happy to address concern with the commission. But what's before you now is a decision on whether or not you approve of the homes that we want to build on this site that's already been entitled. And we're going through the public works and engineering departments right now, fire department, to ensure that what we're building conforms to current city standards. So the solution for this problem in this area for drainage is to approve the project to allow us to build it. We're installing the infrastructure. We're installing 48-inch storm drain pipes. We extended a 48-inch storm drain pipe from Vermont down to Myers. We extended the 48-inch storm drain pipe, another one, on Ohio for where the Beezer project ended, can take it down to Little League, and both of those join into the existing 81-inch storm drain. So with the development of this project, we will continue to expand the storm drain system in that area to help reduce downstream flow problems that existing homeowners in Vermont are dealing with. So we hope that we garner your support. Thank you for the time listening to me. Hope that made a little bit of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any comments or questions for the applicant from the commission?
I have just a quick comment. I would like to thank you for your presentation. You opened my eyes to how the hydraulics works on the hillside development. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Sure, glad to help.
Chair Guerrero. I just want to make a notation that the developer, GFR Homes, did provide a letter to staff as it relates to the development, indicating what he indicated, that, what is before you is for the design of the homes, in order for them to be able to build them on that previously approved tentative map that, as he had mentioned and provided a lot of insight, has already gone through multiple reviews with staff, and that us as staff will continue to work with them to make sure that whatever is built there is in compliance.
Thank you. Did we have any public comments? No? Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing now. And may I entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the design for this project and go to a vote if we.
I'll give a second.
Call for the vote.
Chair Guerrero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Armstead. Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Quill. Commissioner Flores,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner Quill, can you say that yes one more time on record, because your mic wasn't on? Your mic,
Yes.
thank you. So the motion is approved.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Planning Commission reports, announcements. Anything from the commissioners?
I have,
Mike.
and this is a question for the lady from Public Works. You may or may not know, but last Planning Commission, we had a resident here who asked a question about,
Yes, so we were going to provide that under the director's update. So
oh, next meeting?
no, right now, after.
Oh, okay,
She can address it right now.
okay.
Yeah, since it's been brought up, if Susan's prepared, we can just present that right now.
Okay, well then, she was a teacher and a resident from, I think it was Fairfax Elementary School, and she wanted to know about construction of a road that sealed off part of the playground for the kids, and they were building a road for this housing tract, and it wasn't completed, and she wants to know when will it, what's next? Is it going to be completed? She said she had called, your project office, and there was no answer, and she couldn't get anything.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. This is a emergency situation. What happened is that there's it's called Cross Street Bridge. So it's a bridge that goes across this, flood control channel, and is the only public access for this about 100 or so, people community, and that is right next to this Fairfax Elementary School. So what happened is that this bridge it's been, it's old and became unsafe. What happened was that there were homeless people that were, living under the bridge, and they were, burning fire to keep warm, and so actually it was causing structural damage to this bridge. And then residents noticed that the bridge was kind of, became unstable. There's cracks, so they reported to Public Works, and then we went and inspected it. We even hired a professional structural engineer to do an inspection of that bridge and determined that it really is unsafe to drive over it. So that's why we had to do an emergency shutdown of that bridge. But by doing that, essentially, it completely shut off the access of this 100 or so people community to the outside world, right? So then the only temporary emergency roadway we could help facilitate them was to and through, the goodwill of the school, the San Bernardino Unified School District, that they agreed, we entered into a MOU, agreement that we build a temporary roadway, from this community. Well, it was kind of going through their field. It wasn't a soccer field, but it was kind of, their sports field. So to be able to access, gateway, so that kind of provides at least like a temporary roadway for the community to access the, to the general public. In the meantime, we are working on, repairing, this bridge, but we're looking at, there are two alternatives that we're currently evaluating. One way is just kind of reinforce this, very old bridge. The other way is that we can, order a prefabricated bridge to replace this existing bridge. So that will be, a more preferred if, pricing wise and time wise that we can, make it work. So all in all, I think we're looking at, this whole project can be completed by fall this year. And this is what we've been communicating with the school district about, the time schedule. So currently we are actively, working on the design of this bridge, looking at these two alternatives, and probably it'll be shortly in the next week or two, we'll be able to make a decision on which way to go. But still, for either alternative, it's going to be, we're planning to have, the bridge construction to be completed by the fall this year, and then the school, everything will be restored back to the pre-existing conditions, at that time.
Thank you. So it's a work in progress.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Okay, anything else from the commissioners? Go ahead.
I don't know if this will be covered in the director's report, but at the last commission, I asked a question. When the conditions of approval call for the developer to put money, to give money to the city, for the city to then put it into a fund and do the improvements that the developer should be doing at that time, is there a certain time frame where that money has to be spent by and programmed by? And that was going to be brought back at this meeting. Is that in the director's report?
I do not have that information this evening.
While they're discussing, anybody have a comment or anything to report? Any activities, any functions? No? No? What's that?
I think I can just kind of provide
I
a
may.
general comment about that subject matter. So it's kind of, it's about the, in lieu fees that we are collecting, for, like, for example, in some cases that we require, development to widen the city roadway, if in some cases that it's not feasible to do it right now at this time, that we have given them the option to pay an in lieu fee, and then that way, city will at least have some money that if we can do it, sometime in the future, to do that roadway widening. Because per our general plan, there is a plan about, that throughout the whole city, that what these roadways, ultimately we would like it to be, certain width, be able to accommodate the number of traffic lanes or sidewalks, things like that. So that is something I think we do want to work on, because if you really think about the city development, it's not just, a 3 to 5 year thing. It's really, we're probably looking at something, 20, 30, 50 years, or even, 100 years. So ideally, we would really like to have, like, these are just kind of in lieu fees can be put into almost like a trust fund. That will be helpful, designated for roadway widening purposes. Because there's always that may say, in the next to 5 years, there's an opportunity to widen the roadway, say, at this location, in this area, then at least we have money in sort of like this designated fund to do that. And then maybe further down the road that there's another area that opportunity comes up, then we can do similar type of improvement. So, I mean, this is something perhaps we will, need to look into that exactly what the law, currently the code or whatever, the rule book says. But I think it probably, if it's not working out exactly what it needs to be, and I would say what it needs to be is really a more long range, improvement that even though money we collected for this location, that may not be able to cannot say, make that roadway widening, say within the next, 3 to 5 years. But, if there's opportunities as another location, we can still utilize the fund, in this total fund for that purpose. That way, say maybe 10 years down the road, then the opportunity comes up for this location, then we can still, utilize this fund, for this location. So anyway, that's kind of, a plan that we're working on, because there are a number of in lieu, programs that not just roadway widening, there's also power line undergrounding, So I think for a city development, it's really better to look, on a longer, broader horizon. So anyway, so I don't have like a, a definite answer, but I think there's ideas and plans that we can try to kind of work through a legal premise.
So we can get an answer at a later time?
Yes, we can follow up further with Public Works to bring that forward to you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I have a question, because you just brought something up. So we're getting these fees from developers, whatever, for road improvements or other improvements. Does it go into just the big black box, or is it something we can follow as designated road improvements on Palm, $100 million, whatever? We can go and look and say, oh, there it is, it's in this trust. For other infrastructure, oh, there it is, it's in this trust. Or is it in the big black pot and it's just gone? I'm just asking, how would we know? She mentioned a trust, which is great. Does it exist? That's a question.
I mean, that would be something I would have to follow up on. Those types of fees, those in lieu fees, fair share fees, things of that sort aren't managed by the planning division. So it's not information that I have. That's typically something through Public Works, but we can follow up with Commissioner Sherrick's question as well and try to bring that forward as a more comprehensive answer at a future meeting.
Please don't make it too far in the future. Like maybe the next meeting would be awesome.
We will do our best.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further director report information?
Yeah, so just a couple kind of brief announcements. One, as many of the commissioners may be aware, and as was briefly mentioned earlier in the meeting, do want to announce that our city planner, David Murray, is no longer with the city as of last Monday, the 1st. That was his last day. And our director, Nathan Freeman, has also put in his resignation. His final day will be tomorrow, the 10th. So moving forward, we do not have anyone in those positions at this time. Unfortunately, I don't have information on how the staffing will be looking to fill those positions, or whether there'll be any interim staff. That's still being sorted out, but we will hopefully find out sooner than later. Separate from that, I did want to mention a couple good things. We do have, as we're all aware, we do have the general plan, housing element, downtown plan, that the larger project that we're working on there. We are reaching a point with the housing element here coming up very quickly. We're going to be commencing the public review of the completed draft element. We do have that. We've reviewed it internally. We're working through final revisions, and our intent is to start the 30-day public review on that this Friday, on the 12th. When we do that, that document will be posted. We'll have physical copies in office, but primarily it'll be posted on the city's website and on the project website. That's the futuresb2050.com, so that we can gain comments from the public. We'll send out, as part of the publication of it, we will be sending out kind of information to our general plan committee, our downtown committee, yourselves. But I did just want to mention that so that you're aware that that's coming up, and, you know, hopefully we'll have some good comments coming in on that. Lastly, I did want to make note, as it is right now, looking forward on items that we'll be bringing to you, it does not look like we have anything for this following month. That would be the June meeting. That hasn't been confirmed yet. We're still working through that, but I did want to just, you know, bring to your attention that there is the likely possibility of canceling that meeting, and then looking to possibly come back in July as, you know, projects work their way through the queue. But once we do confirm that, either Jessica or Serena will be reaching out, you know, as they would normally, to let you know in plenty of time that meeting would not be held, if that is the case. And that's it.
Did you have something?
A general comment. As I'm sure most of us know, the storage facility project that we all denied, he had appealed it at the city council. It was pulled at 11 o'clock, but it was pulled. My concern is transparency in the department. And this is basic, I won't go into details, but transparency in the department, I would like to see more transparency instead of things happening and we get blindsided, or the council gets blindsided. That happened with Carousel Mall. This was something that I think kind of blindsided us too at the council meeting. Can we get more transparency from your department? And is there a DREC meeting or DERC? So I did have it right. Is there a DERC meeting? Can somebody briefly explain what it is, and can we briefly explain what it is first?
So the Development and Environmental Review Committee, that's the DERC, that is kind of it's one of our review and approval authorities through the city. Ultimately, when we look at projects, there are 4 different ways that they can be processed, kind of going in order. You have items approved administratively, items approved through, or reviewed and approved through the Development and Environmental Review Committee, the Planning Commission, yourselves, and then ultimately those items that require council approval. They're also kind of the technical body for the city. That's the easiest way to think of them. It is a city staff manned committee. So it's not appointed members, it's representatives from all of our departments, you know, internally, planning, building and safety, several members from Public Works, including, you know, traffic, engineering, our on-site engineering, water departments, and we do include the fire department as well, as the outside agency. They are the body that looks at items before they come to you. So they are the group that we work through as the planning staff to review those projects, prepare the draft conditions, what you see in the resolutions that we bring forward. The majority of that is what we've compiled kind of in consultation with their offices. Because as we are for certain things, they are the technical experts in other matters. So we work kind of collectively on that. They do also have the authority to approve items and recommend to you, or to you and to the council ultimately. I don't know if that kind of gives a kind of a brief overview of what they do.
So my question then comes, I don't want details, I don't need that, but could we get a list of projects that come before your meeting? We don't need great details.
Oh, excuse me. The items that do go forward, they are ultimately a public hearing in the exact same way that this body is. We do prepare agendas for those. Those are posted on the city's website. in the same exact portal that the Planning Commission packet is posted. It's just another one of the tabs, on that list, as all the various commissions and committees are included.
So it's posted monthly, that means once a month, or what is it?
Those meetings are held the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. And the information for those meetings are posted the end of the week prior in the same kind of format that we do for this body.
One last question. Do you have any update on the short-term rental program we were working on briefly?
That is something that our Economic Development Department is still working on. I did look into that a little bit earlier today, and it's my understanding the intent right now is bringing something back to you for consideration at the July meeting. That is still subject to change. I do want to be upfront about that, just because it is as we know from the meeting that we had a couple months back, it is a very, there's a lot of aspects to the project and to that process. We do want to make sure that what we bring forward is the best version of it. But right now, we are working hard to have that in July.
All right, so anything else? We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:25 PM to possibly Tuesday, June the 13th. Thank you.